Hey everyone, the other day an ICE officer dropped this truth bomb.
Second reporting, we're here to arrest a child sex offender. And you guys are out here honking.
Oh, they're not. No, we're press. We're not
That
honking.
vehicle right there is honking and impeding our investigations while we're trying to arrest a child sex offender. That's who you guys are protecting. Insane.
I'm Rich Lowry of National Review. Now, there's no way of knowing whether that ICE officer was telling the truth, right? But it does have the ring of truth, given the list of terrible malfactors we've seen picked up among illegal immigrants there in the Twin Cities. But we also have a very good idea of the general picture here in terms of the deportations over the last year or so, and they, I believe, vindicate ICE. Now, you don't need to take my word for it on these numbers. You don't need to take National Review's word for it, although you should always believe what National Review says. Let's go to a purportedly unbiased source, a source actually that is biased against the Trump administration, the New York Times. It had a pretty good rundown the other day of how many people Trump has deported and in what categories. Now, according to the Times, Trump has deported 600,000 people over the last year. That includes 230 removals. That's what we think of as traditional deportation. You find someone in the interior of the country, say Chicago, you deport them, you remove them, they're gone. 230 of those, then 270 returns. That's more, you pick someone up right when they come across the border, turn them around, send them home. But add them up, 230, 270, that's 600. Now there's some fuzziness in these numbers. Maybe I'll get to that a little bit more later, but 600,000, and this is a key chart in the piece. I see this chart over here with Trump. He's at 230 here in 2025, dwarfs anything that was happening under Biden, dwarfs what was happening under Trump, even in the first term, and exceeds what Obama was doing as well. I want to come back to that, though, because these numbers cut off at 2012, and there might be a reason for that. Let's take a quick look, though, at the number for the so-called returns. Trump at 270, as I mentioned, dwarfed by Biden, because so many people are coming across the border. There's a lot of opportunity for returns, even though they're letting in millions of people as well, and also a bunch under Obama. Now, the sense we're getting from that removal chart, right, is that this is big. Trump is doing something unprecedented. But hold on a minute. This gets to the cutoff in 2012 with Obama, because Obama was doing a lot of removals and returns himself. Now, he wanted to classify the returns as removals so he could trade them as interior deportation. So there's some fuzziness here, but I want to look at other numbers from an official DHS account. Again, a little apples and oranges here. I'm not quite sure how the New York Times is defining its removals and returns and how DHS is doing it, but it's still good to get a sense of the scale here. All right, so here we go. Numbers for Obama in 2016. Let's start here. Not particularly high, right? Removals, 331,000, returns, 106,000, but look back a little earlier, 2012, that's the cutoff I talked about, 415,000 removals, 231,000 returns. Let's look at 379 and 582, right? So that's a big number. So if you look at it in that context, maybe what Trump is doing isn't so unprecedented, huh? That's Obama. How about George W. Bush? Well, we got 1 million returns in 2006, 280,000 removals in 2005, another 1 million returns, 246,000 removals, 2004, 1.1 million returns, 240,000 removals. How about Bill Clinton? Well, look at these returns. 2000, 1.6 million, 99, 1.5, 98, 1.5, 97, 1.4, 96, 1.5. I think you get the idea. How about the 1980s? Well, in the middle of that decade, maybe 3 million illegal immigrants in the country, yet there's a reference in a Sandra Day O'Connor written Supreme Court decision at the time to 1 million apprehensions of illegal immigrants in a single year in the United States. Proportionally, that is huge. So that context just shows that what we're experiencing here with Trump is a return to what once was the norm in terms of enforcement, when it was considered intolerable to have a massive population of illegal immigrants in the country, and was taken for granted that we would attempt at least to enforce our laws. And what happened is there was a new status quo created that was really the exception in typical American practice. You saw it in Obama towards the end when they kneecapped interior enforcement, and then under Mayorkas and Biden when you really suppressed almost all interior enforcement. That is the exception that folks in Minneapolis now consider the status quo that has to be protected. But they're wrong. We should want ICE doing what they're doing now, which is a version again of the American norm. Now, who is actually being picked up by ICE? The New York Times has some interesting numbers in that regard as well. Take a look at this. We're looking here at the monthly pace of removals. We have 4 categories. Violent convictions, right? Trump's doing 1,100 of those every month. Some other past conviction, 3,900. Pending criminal charges, 2,700. No criminal record, 2,100. And all these, needless to say, are higher, especially no criminal record, than what Biden was doing, but also pending criminal charges, much bigger, violent convictions also bigger. Now, there are 2 ways to look at those numbers. The anti-ICE people will say, look, you're only picking up 1,100 people a month who have violent convictions, and then you're doing this other 90%. Why are you doing that other 90%? Let's just focus on the 10, whereas pro-ICE people like me, and I think most common sense people out there will say, wait a minute, 80% of these people either have a violent conviction or some other conviction or some other pending charge. It's only 20% that don't have any charge whatsoever. So do we really want, and probably that other category of crimes that aren't violent or so-called violent, a lot depends on how you're defining violent, but probably involve DUIs and domestic violence overwhelmingly. Do we really want illegal immigrants who are committing crimes on top of the various offenses they're committing when they're illegal immigrants here in the immigration arena to stay in the country with a couple DUIs? Why? Why would we do that? And then we get to the 20% that don't have any conviction or pending charges. And what you need to realize about those folks is some significant percentage of them, it's not broken down here, have so-called final orders of removal against them. That means your case has gone through the entire process. Procedurally, every box has been checked in your case, and a judge has said, no, your claims aren't legitimate, and you got to go, and I'm ordering you removed. Why would we let those illegal immigrants stay? That makes no sense either. As my friend Art Arthur of the Center for Immigration Studies points out, there have been 500,000 more final orders of removal issued just in fiscal year 2025. In the federal fiscal year, that's from September 2024 to September 2025. That's on top of 1.4 million final orders of removal that were already on the books. And by the way, picking these people up under the law, it's not discretionary. Even though they haven't committed other crimes, some of them or a lot of them, you still are supposed to go and detain them. As Art points out, Section 241A2A mandates, repeat, mandates that DHS, at least as initial matter, take all aliens under final removal orders into custody. Congress doubled down on that with the Laken-Riley Act, which empowered state attorneys general to sue DHS for its failure to detain aliens under final orders of removal if such failure, quote, harms such state or its residents, close quote. Let's look at another chart from the New York Times piece. What can I say? I'm just a really devoted New York Times reader. But again, this one's illuminating. Here we're looking at detentions at prisons and jails as opposed to detentions, apprehensions in communities, right? So first we have this orange line for the prisons and jails. End of Biden years, it's higher than in communities. Then you have Trump taking office. Both lines jump up. Jails and prisons occasionally is higher than communities, but communities typically is higher than jails and prisons. So again, this chart, the point of it is to show, oh, wow, Trump is doing something crazy here. Look at how those in-community apprehensions have gone way up and past the line for jails and prisons. Well, the fact is both lines were artificially suppressed under Biden, and the apprehended in jail or prison line would be much higher under Trump. It's gone up under Trump, but would be higher still if it weren't for sanctuary policies of places like Minneapolis. ICE would much rather apprehend people in jail or prison because it's much easier for ICE and much safer for everyone involved. But instead, places like Minneapolis release them back into the community, and then they urge their residents who are opposed to ICE to go out and protect their neighbors. Well, they wouldn't be their neighbors if they had stayed in jail. In jail, no one's your neighbor except for the guy in the cell across the hallway. And again, that's where ICE would prefer to pick these folks up. Now, it doesn't mean that everyone could be picked up from prison and jail. ICE is under no obligation to ignore all other illegal immigrants, especially, again, as we discussed, illegal immigrants with final orders of removal. In fact, the opposite. The law says you have to go get them. So all this just shows that what Minneapolis is trying to protect is an intolerable status quo that is unusual in American life and was created by the twisted immigration priorities of Obama and then especially Joe Biden. And if you have any doubt about that, just go look at the numbers. I'm Rich Lowry, over and out.